Okay, guys. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Town Hall daily meeting for private practice owners. I just, before I start, I want to remind to you guys that tonight, yes, tonight at 6 p.m., we are doing a webinar where we are going to discuss with you guys some solutions for your private practice right now, and specifically how we are using right now diagnostics in various formats in order to continue bringing in revenue into the practice. Obviously, if you go to www.savephysicaltherapy.com, that is the area where you can find information about all of these webinars, and you can register. Also, tomorrow, Wednesday, at 6 p.m., we will have another webinar. You can go in that site again to register, savephysicaltherapy.com. And in that webinar, we have as guests both Mary Dualong and Bob Kowalik, where we're going to discuss specifically the billing of telehealth. We have also in the call today both Mary and Bob, so we can get more of an understanding of the whole Medicare situation and the big fiasco that took place yesterday with the initial paperwork that came out from CMS indicating that physical therapy services do qualify for telehealth. Physical therapy codes do qualify for telehealth, but physical therapists cannot provide physical therapy in telehealth. It is absurd what has happened. It's a fiasco. It's a slap on the face. I mean, we'll get more details. Let's get more details on that. I'm going to turn it over. Mary, why don't you, Mary and I have been on text messages at 5:30 a.m. my time, 4:30 a.m. her time. So Mary, let's hear it from you.
So that's why I was in my nightcap. So yes, it's a fiasco. It's unbelievable. CMS on one hand says they're going to add therapy services to be covered under the physician fee schedule when delivering telehealth. However, they failed to expand the list of eligible providers. So as of this moment, in spite of what was stated yesterday by CMS and ordered as a waiver, we cannot provide telehealth as a covered benefit to Medicare beneficiaries. So what is happening right now, the APTA, the AOTA, and ASHA have requested a meeting with the CMS to discuss this. They're hoping they will be able to turn this corner and get this settled once and for all, hopefully today. But when I spoke to them earlier this morning, they did say they did not have a confirmation for the meeting. So that puts us back in the situation where if we are using telehealth to treat Medicare beneficiaries, it is a non-covered benefit and would be a cash-based service for Medicare beneficiaries under traditional Medicare. So that's basically what is happening. The APTA is releasing a summary of the interim rules that Medicare published on the 26th. And so it'll highlight some of that. If you want to see the exact language that contradicts what was released is okay, and then says, no, it's not okay. Demi has a link, and it's page 35, and it's going to be notoriously page 35, I am sure. So that's really all we can say. I mean, they've laid out the CPT codes that we could use, the, you know, everything, the modifiers, the whole 9 yards is laid out, but we can't touch it. So it's unfortunate, but hopefully we'll have a positive resolution.
Do you think it's an oversight or an intentional exclusion?
You think I'm going to say that live?
Yeah.
You know, I think things are moving so quickly that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing.
Yeah.
I would like to think that this is not intentional. But, you know, they're challenging us as far as our perseverance to get this particular mode of treating patients allowable as a covered service. And we usually meet the need. So as far as trying to respond to them, but I wouldn't have any way of knowing whether there is.
Do you know if for the providers that are approved, is Medicare paying for the procedure codes at parity with the in-office?
Face-to-face, yes, that is our understanding, that the telehealth services will have the same value as face-to-face.
So if we can get a clarification that it was their bad and we are supposed to do it, we could assume that reimbursement would be at comparable levels to done in the clinic.
Right, and you know, we know that they waived the sequestering fee that we have, the 2% reduction. So I would assume that that would apply to these codes when they're billed under telehealth as well.
One of the questions that I was asked by several people, and I have right now posted for you guys to see the final, I have posted on the chat a link of the document, which was the final document that was released later on, that on page 35, at the bottom of the page 35, it has the exclusion. But one of the questions that was asked was that once, let's say they approve it, let's say tomorrow we get a notification that CMS has issued clarification that telehealth services for PTs are fully approved and paid at same rates as in-house. Mm-hmm. Would that apply from the date that was issued, or it would apply retroactively? Some people are asking.
It appears that it is retroactive back to March 1st, but I would have to go back and verify that, but it appears that it will be retroactive.
So then let me give this hypothetical scenario, right? And I'll tell you when, and I'll tell you if this hypothetical scenario could work, okay? So right now, not only myself, but many others may be sitting around or may have staff members sitting around, and maybe they could call some of their Medicare patients right now, and they may tell the patient, listen, I'm not going to charge you right now anything. I'm going to do the session until I find out what's going to happen by Medicare. And that therapist provides that session. Can that happen? Can that therapist provide that session? And if something gets issued from Medicare that allows the telehealth, then we can bill for that session, or if not, then we don't have to bill anything and do that session for free.
Well, Medicare did state, and actually the OIG stated that they would not take action for heavy discounts or waiving of fees at all under this pandemic. So I would think, now I'm gonna have to do a disclaimer because we just really don't know. We have one hand saying yes, one hand saying no. But if you did not charge the patient for their co-share, that also is allowed. So that's basically what you'd be telling the patient. We think we're going to be approved by Medicare. We're not going to collect your co-share. If for some reason Medicare does not amend the CARES Act, then we won't be billing you at all. I think there is some latitude there by the OIG. The issue about whether you call patients, quote, and advertise it is also an area that it appears that there's not going to be any action taken, even though in the definition of telehealth, it states established patients. What happened yesterday, as far as the major changes that Trump introduced yesterday, is that they're letting a lot of things slide. And I think that probably will be one, because they're allowing telephone conferences and a lot of other things. So I would say tread lightly on, calling every patient in the book that's on your, have been on your schedule or active patients. But those that really would be at a disservice, they would have a compromised condition. If you weren't treating them, I would tell you that was appropriate. If it's some of your patients that really could wait, I don't think it would be wise to initiate that. It'd be hard to justify the intervention.
Can I ask a question, Demi? Mary, so assuming that this is an oversight, just for a second, we have a lot of therapists out there that have been and probably have active patients who are being billed as a cash service, self-pay for telehealth, and all of a sudden this now changes, and you're in the middle of, a plan of care with somebody through virtual services of some sort. What's your recommendation on how to respond to that change of condition in the middle of a plan of care with that?
Well, the plan of care does not have to address how the service is delivered. So that's not a problem. The payment is a totally separate issue. And so if, let's say it is March 1st, retroactive billing, then obviously you would have the opportunity to refund the patient and collect only their co-share if that was appropriate. Or if you chose to discount it, you could do that as well. It would go back to that retroactive starting date.
So on the date that that physical therapists were allowed to do physical therapy procedures, from that point forward, the cash-based relationship for those services would need to end.
Yes, it would.
Okay.
Because it would be a covered service, and we cannot collect cash from a Medicare patient, a traditional Medicare. If it is a covered service, it is medically necessary.
Sorry. It's great that besides our 1 p.m. meetings daily, these town hall meetings on Wednesday night at 6 p.m. The webinar we have will specifically deal with the billing of telehealth. That's going to be the topic. So you guys are going to have an hour to ask all of your questions. And somebody asked if the fact that right now we are not getting paid for regular telehealth from Medicare, despite yesterday's situation, if that will affect any other insurance companies. I would say generally not. It will not affect other insurance companies.
They seem to be following suit. We're seeing some that agree to it, UnitedHealth, Cigna. I know the Blues in Texas are. So again, you have to be familiar with your Practice Act to make sure it's not prohibited by the Practice Act. or any other state law. But I would think that in my position has been, if we have this type of approval for covered services for commercial and in some cases workers' comp and Medicare Advantage. Well, let's not talk about Medicare Advantage, but if we have that, basically what we're doing is we are treating patients that aren't at the highest risk level. And if Medicare does not allow us to treat those who have been identified as high risk, and that's the traditional Medicare patient, what is that saying? You know, it's a terrible statement that, okay, you can treat your walking wounded, but the elderly or those covered by Medicare can't be treated. And what is that? What happens? They're gonna be moved into other facilities, skilled nursing, you know, or whatever, because if they have acute conditions, they can quickly have a complicating factor.
And another thing I wanted to mention in regards to the reimbursement, you have to check with the different carriers. For example, here in New York, we checked and we have confirmation from a whole bunch of carriers, including Medicaid carriers, Medicaid HMO insurances that they pay, and they pay pretty well, actually. So, you know, if you check with carriers and those insurances they pay, then go ahead and market to those insurances. Go ahead.
I think last week when Mark Milligan spoke, he had a list. This was actually for the Texas Physical Therapy Association. He did a webinar on telehealth, and he had a list of questions that you should ask the payers when you're verifying benefits. I added some to it, and that was in SIPA, that was put out sometime last week. But I think it would be a nice thing to add to this group so they have those questions. So you don't forget things, you know. So when your front office is verifying benefits or PT or whoever's left in the clinic to do this has a roadmap.
Okay.
And tomorrow, I know that Bob will probably have the lion's share talking about billing. I will address, if this converts, if we are able to do telehealth, some of the documentation things we want to be aware of.
Okay. Do me a favor, everybody. I want to keep this meeting at the time limitation that we gave, like to the half hour. So we have another 10 minutes. If you have right now another question in regards to Medicare and the telehealth in regards to Medicare, just say yes or post your question once again right now, because then I know there are a couple of questions on the SBA loans that we want to tackle those too. Okay, let's see. Humana said, no, we don't cover. And I had them call back and they said they cover whatever Medicare does, somebody says.
Well, is that a Medicare Advantage plan that they're contacting?
Yeah, she says yes, it's a Medicare Advantage plan, yeah.
So, and you know, everybody knows that they can make their own rules. They have to make sure they provide services equal to traditional Medicare, which means Medicare provides, you know, for covered services by a physical therapist. So does the Medicare Advantage plan. But how they implement it, what they cover, it's really, they can do a lot of cherry picking, in other words. And so it is critically important not to assume that they all will do as Medicare. And in this case, we hope they don't until we know that things have changed.
And there is a question about ABN requirement, and it can be a little tricky because my understanding is if you do, let's say, an e-visit, right? And then you decide to have communicate with the patient, and you decide to make that a cash paid patient on telehealth. Because up to now, PTs are not really approved telehealth providers, and ABN is not required. But is this correct, guys? Okay, but if PTs, let's say tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, become approved providers, and would at some point an ABN required?
The ABN is required when services are no longer medically necessary. If it is a non-covered service, no ABN is required. But let's take that telehealth situation a little ways. Let's say that you did an e-visit, it turned into a cash pay visit because the patient needed the services. And then somewhere down the road, we got approval to bill and to provide telehealth services. Then you would obviously not collect cash from the patient. And there would be no need for an ABN, because then you would be billing for a covered service. So just remember the point that if it is not covered, if it's not a covered service, you don't have to use an ABN. Do I suggest you use one? Yes, I kind of think it's a silver bullet. A lot of the Medicare beneficiaries sign things and do things, and then along comes son or daughter with good intentions saying, hey, why did you bill my parent? You know, why didn't Medicare pay for this? And at least you would have something signed that states they understand why and what you're billing them for.
Also, let me ask you, and my position has been, and this is what I've been advising people, is that despite the fact right now they are relaxing the rules of HIPAA compliant telehealth platforms, that it would be best if people got into the habit and implement a HIPAA compliant platform from the beginning right now.
Absolutely. I mean, the bottom line is the privacy and security rules still exist. They're relaxing them because of the crises, but we have to make every effort possible to comply to the highest level that we can, and that is reasonable for the patient to communicate with us. So that means minimal necessary. You need to establish who needs to be in the room. If there's, you know, when you're doing telehealth or whatever, you want to keep things down to a minimal necessary access or disclosure.
Okay.
And BAA. If you can get a BAA, then you're in, that's a business associate agreement. That is preferred. OCR said they were not going to sanction people if they couldn't get one so in time to start delivering acute services or medically necessary services. But again, I'd be looking for platforms that do generate or agree to business associate agreement.
Now, a question. Yeah, I mean, I hear somebody, there is a Zoom thing on that is HIPAA compliant, but you have to pay a minimum of $200 per person. I think it's a little bit too much.
Yeah, and I think it's a 10-person minimum as well. So
10-person, yeah.
$200 a month.
I mean,
that's hefty.
Yeah, I mean,
version.
I'm not going to disclose by name the platform we are using, but if you go to, and I put the posting there, teleptforme.com, then you will find out from there the platform that we are using. I also, for those who are interested in training or telehealth, a company, Hands-On Seminars at handsonseminars.com offers a telehealth certification course, and full disclosure, that is our company. So I'm biased about that. So let me see. Yeah, okay. So Jacob, thank you for the information on Doxy. How about, let me ask you from now, Bob, I know that tomorrow we're going to be, you and Mary will be at 6 p.m. with us. Bob, are you available at all tomorrow at 1 so we can go over SBA loans and stuff like that? There are questions from people.
Yes, I'll plan on being on, and just really quickly on it, the SBA disaster loans that were in place before the CARES Act passed are, you can't duplicate the use of the loan in the CARES Act. So the CARES Act really is intended to replace those loans because the maximum loan calculation includes the principal balance on a previously received SBA loan as long as it came out after January 1st. So it's clear that they want to use the CARES Act to kind of replace those SBA loans that people quickly got after the first of the year. And you know, there's a lot of questions in there about that, but sure, I would plan on being on tomorrow.
I have there on the chat at least, I would say 7 or 8 questions that were on the various loans and the PPP and the third package, the CARES Act that was released. So if we can help people with that tomorrow, that would be great.
Are y'all going to address the Medicare acceleration advance payment?
Okay, you guys want to say a couple of words on that? We can cover that on this, and then that would be the last thing we cover.
Tomorrow, are you saying?
No, today. You want like 5 minutes to cover it right now?
Oh, I don't think I'm prepared to. I should look at my notes. I think that this is something that people think you don't have to pay back.
Oh no.
You know, it's just not free money. And we do have a nice write-up in our newsletter. So I can share some of that with you, Demi, and then you can share it with the audience.
Yes.
You know, I had a lot of requests from yesterday for the Excel work that I'm doing on helping people build cash flow projections. So we're close to being done with that, and that's really what this comes down to: is do you need to take the advance, you know, to get you to some future date, right? And you have to do the proper calculations on with and without, and when do you run out of cash if you run out of cash, and considering the CARES Act funding and everything else that's going on and your spend rates. And so it's a very, very complicated Excel workbook that considers all those variables, but I have it. We're fine tuning it, tweaking it, testing it right now. It's a 3-month, if your normal Medicare reimbursement is, you know, $20,000, you're allowed to take an advance on 3 times your normal. And the question is, there isn't clarity on the payback. It's a 120-day delay for PT that could extend out over 210 days, but it's not clear as to, do they take 100% of your future revenue against that until it's covered, or some percentage? And so the cash flow,
It's very gray.
yeah, the cash flow projection on it is not 100% clear. And without clarity, I would assume that they're going to take 100% of normal reimbursement at the future point until what you borrow is offset, and until told differently. So I would approach it that way.
That's what I assumed, and I said, so you just delayed the cash flow problem.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Basically, that's what's there.
And I would like to make a final comment before we go today, and then we'll resume tomorrow. But here is an advice I would like to mention here about, not about Medicare, but about the PPP loans, okay? The CARES Act major loan. Guys, it's $350 billion, okay? Here is my question to you. Do you think that $350 billion is enough to cover all of the businesses that will apply in the United States? I do not know the answer, but I want to be one of the businesses that will be covered. Okay. So how is this going to work out? Hopefully, with some sort of priority list based on the timely fashion that applications were submitted. All right. So here is what I am doing right now. I am putting together a whole bunch of information that I believe might be necessary for that. And I'm putting it together in a digital format. I am going to post in the chat what I am putting together. Now I have to tell you, I don't believe they will ask for all that, but this is, let me type it correctly. This is what I am putting together. These documents. I just posted to you the documents that I'm putting together. I put it in the chat section. I'm gonna have these documents in a folder in my computer, all of them in an electronic fashion. And when they release that, yes, you can submit now your applications, I'll try to be amongst the businesses that will be submitting on the early on phase. Okay. Those who are gonna say, hey, I need another week to collect my information, I don't know.
I'm also, and what I'm sending out, it will include all of the data points that you have to have in order to know loan amounts, the forgiveness amounts, the usable amounts. So you'll be getting that from me as well.
Awesome.
I do know that maximum loan amounts under $1 million are prioritized for being expedited over larger loans. So the vast majority of the PT world will be applying for under $1 million loans. So those are prioritized over larger loans.
Which is good. Okay, Mary, thank you so much. Bob, thank you so much. Both of you guys are awesome.
Thank you.
Let's all of us put our positive energy today and think positively about Medicare. And if it doesn't happen, I don't know. I think I'm gonna take a ticket or drive my car to Washington, D.C., but I can't even go. I have to put myself in 14 days on quarantine traveling from New York.
We need the patience.
Bring the patience, yes.
Maybe
legislators and whomever else.
Maybe tomorrow somebody's going to say April Fools and none of this ever actually happened.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Thank you guys and see you all tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.